So this is way more than just another story about some corporate data breach. This is the insane, true story of how a Seth Rogen and James Franco comedy literally triggered an international crisis, brought a massive corporation to its knees, and dragged the President of the United States into a global showdown. Just picture this for a second. You walk into work, you sit down, you log onto your computer, and this is what you see. A creepy red skeleton, a threatening message, and actual gunfire sounds coming from your speakers. For thousands of Sony Pictures employees, this was no joke. This was the opening salvo in a cyber attack so devastating it would become a genuine international incident. So, the big question is, how did this even happen? How on earth does a single movie go from being a simple box office gamble to a full-blown national security threat? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down right here. To really get what happened, you have to understand the fuse that was lit first. And it all kicked off with a movie that, on paper, was supposed to be a surefire hit. You've got to remember the context here. At the time, Sony Pictures was in a bit of a slump. They were really, really desperate for a big win at the box office. So they bet big on The Interview, a comedy about assassinating a living world leader. For them, the controversy wasn't a problem. It was a feature. They thought it would be great publicity. They just had no idea what was coming. And, North Korea definitely noticed. Their reaction was swift and it was serious. They didn't just criticize the movie, they called it the most blatant act of terrorism and war. And then they promised a merciless countermeasure. This was not just diplomatic chatter, it was a straight-up threat. And here's where things get really interesting, because Sony's own past becomes a huge part of the story. The hacking community actually had a nickname for the company, Sonage. Yeah, a mashup of Sony and owned. It was a term that came directly from the company's long and pretty embarrassing history of bad cybersecurity. I mean, this was not some random out-of-the-blue thing. Just look at the track record. Back in 2005, they secretly put software on their own music CDs that created security holes for their customers. In 2011, the PlayStation Network got hacked, leaking data from over 75 million people. And just months before this big attack, an audit found huge security gaps. Sony wasn't just a target, it was practically leaving the front door wide open. The attackers? Oh, they knew all of this. They knew exactly where all the weak spots were. And the way they just walked right in, well, it was almost laughably simple. It all started with something called spear phishing. Basically, fake emails made to look like they were from Apple. Employees, even senior execs, clicked the link and typed in their passwords. Well, with those credentials, the hackers found a match for a top IT guy. And just like that, they had the keys to the entire kingdom. And the malware they unleashed was just brutal. It didn't just steal data, it erased everything. Almost half of all their computers and over half of their servers were totally wiped, just useless bricks. One employee said Sony was thrown back into the era of Betamax. The whole company was just paralyzed. So the digital meltdown was just phase 1. Phase 2? That's when a flood of stolen data was released, and things went from bad to absolute chaos inside the company. The hackers just started dumping terabytes of sensitive information online for everyone to see. And it began with this one stark number, 47,000. That is how many social security numbers got leaked. In an instant, this went from a corporate problem to a deeply personal crisis for tens of thousands of people. And the sheer amount of stuff they just threw out there was staggering. Entire unreleased movies were being pirated. But it was the personal stuff that was so damaging. Medical records, people's salaries, performance reviews, and thousands of private, often very embarrassing executive emails were just public. Some of the worst leaks were emails from Sony's co-chair Amy Pascal. They included some racially insensitive jokes about President Obama. The public backlash was immediate and massive. It forced a public apology, and a few months later, it ultimately played a big part in her resignation. So what's the final price tag for all this chaos? Well, when you add up the cost of rebuilding their entire network, all the legal fees, the settlements, and the lost money from pirated movies, the total damage was estimated to be over $150 million. But believe it or not, the money was just one part of the story. The crisis was about to morph from a corporate disaster into a direct threat against American citizens. As the release date for The Interview got closer, the hackers, who were now calling themselves the Guardians of Peace, sent out a new message.
They threatened any movie theater that showed the film. And they used this one chilling line: "Remember the 11th of September, 2001. And it worked. Terrified for the safety of their customers, all of America's biggest theater chains pulled out. They refused to show the movie. With nowhere left to screen it, Sony made a shocking move. They canceled the Christmas release and put The Interview on the shelf for good. And this is the moment the President of the United States gets involved. President Obama went on TV and called Sony out for their decision, saying they made a mistake. He framed it as giving in to a foreign dictator. And just like that, the hack of a movie studio had officially become a major geopolitical crisis. Okay, so how do we even begin to make sense of this wild escalation? How does a corporate hack spiral completely out of control and turn into a national security emergency? Well, there's a really powerful theory that helps explain it all. It's called normal accidents theory, and the basic idea is pretty simple. In really complex, tightly connected systems, like a giant corporation or a government, huge failures aren't just possible, they're basically inevitable. A small accident in one area can cascade in ways nobody could predict, setting off a much, much bigger disaster. This is exactly what went down with Sony. You have two separate but connected systems here. The first accident, the cyberattack, happens in System 1, Sony Pictures. The result is total corporate chaos. But because that corporate problem was so tightly linked to a geopolitical one, it sparked an unexpected second accident in System 2, the US government. The corporate crisis cascaded right into a national security crisis. And that leaves us with a really tough question for the world we live in today. In an age where a comedy movie can actually start a cyber war, who's ultimately on the hook when a private company's failure turns into a threat to everyone's security?